fun. That's okay. We can cut this part out. I'm so excited. And do you go by Sam?
Sam is perfect.
Sam is great. Okay, awesome. Well, Sam, welcome to the Girl Gang podcast. So thrilled to have you here. You guys, Sam is someone who went from corporate to startup. Now she's in the tech space. So many different things. And we're going to get into some really good conversation today about some of the real pieces of that and what it really looks like. So, Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and I love your wallpaper.
Thank
Loving
you.
it.
I'm
Loving it.
actually not at home. I'm in Austin traveling for business. And so I just popped into a random conference
Love it.
room and
Love it.
it's
We
giving me
love
life.
Austin. We love Austin. Okay, so tell us a little bit about you and how you got into, maybe your first journey into corporate or your first kind of job out of college or whatever your story is.
Yeah, for sure. So my background in 15 seconds. I was born in New Jersey. I went to school in New York at NYU. I thought I was going to be an actor.
Love it.
I decided as I was graduating that was not the life for me. And through a series of very fortunate events, I ended up in the beauty industry, working at a beauty startup. There were 4 of us. My first job was selling products at the beauty counter. And by the time I left, I was leading their e-commerce platform. I was doing a whole bunch of marketing work. I was leading a bunch of sales accounts, and I had, traveled with them to Southeast Asia. I'd really made this lovely career.
Yes.
And it was at that point that I figured, hey, maybe I should go back to school, get a master's, learn something that's not acting, that actually applies to my everyday life. And I ended up not getting a master's. Instead, I went to work in finance. I spent a little bit of time at Bridgewater Associates, which is a hedge fund in Connecticut. And then through another series of fortunate events, found myself back in beauty, working at the largest company I've worked for, Estée Lauder Companies. I spent a little bit of time there, kind of a little bit of a lot of time there, in 2 roles. One as the director of brand strategy and ops for Clinique. And then they sent me out to LA to lead North America consumer engagement and marketing for Smashbox. And that is where I was when I met Chris, my now co-founder, and left a massive public company to start a startup with no money, 2 awesome people, and a great idea.
This is what I love, because some people when they leave their corporate job to start another business or whatever, they have a lot of capital. They have a lot of cash. They have this funding or this, pile of savings or whatever. So I love to hear that you're like, we didn't really have anything, you know? So that's really like fun to hear. We're going to talk about it. What was your experience at Estee Lauder, being with the other brands, Clinique, Smashbox, things like that? Did you love the beauty industry?
I loved it. I still love the beauty industry. It's a really fun industry. Similar to startup life, I think people believe the beauty industry is very glamorous and it's all photo shoots and makeup and parties, and that's some of it. But
Sure.
For me, it was maybe 5% of it, not
Yeah.
50% of it. I really loved it. I loved Estee Lauder Companies. It's a great company. But I'm the kind of person who pours my heart and soul and everything into whatever job I'm doing, whether it's selling makeup at the counter, running global brand strategy for Clinique, or running my own company. And so for me, the value prop wasn't there. I was pouring myself into someone else's business. And so I wanted to do it for myself.
Yeah. And I think that's the case for most people. I mean, my story is a little bit different. I was a teacher, so I was pouring my time and energy and emotions into children, which was great. But at the same time, it was not fulfilling to me anymore. And I love that. So you and your partner, Chris, how did you guys meet? And tell us about the birth of this now startup and what it's called, all of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So while I was at Smashbox in LA, I was working on an interesting project around augmented reality and building micro communities. And it got picked up by Forbes, which was awesome. And I get a random LinkedIn message from someone who I went to middle school with. We were
Gotta
not
love
friends.
LinkedIn.
Random LinkedIn, right? Gotta love it. We weren't not friends, but we weren't friends. He was like a friend of a friend. And his name's Dan. And he was like, hey, I read your article. I'm building a startup in a similar space. I'd really love to talk to you about it. And long story short, Dan and I ended up connecting many times over the next couple of months as he was building a startup and I was helping, and we ended up connecting Smashbox and his startup and lots of super cool things. And one late night, I was talking to him and his co-founder, and they were like, Sam, you should not be working a corporate job. You should be running your own company. This is silly. We actually know a guy, Chris, who is starting a company. He's looking for a co-founder. This is the space. It's in the food space. Is this something you're interested in? I was like, why not? So I took a call that was supposed to be a 20-minute call with Chris. We ended up talking for 3 hours. And coming off of the call, I was like, this is what I want to do for the next decade. So that's how Chris and I met. And Bitewell is the company and was birthed it was birthed originally from Chris's pain. So Chris has founded 2 beverage companies, Koya and Limitless. He was always the biz dev partner in his ventures, and he would travel around the country selling beverages. And he would land in a new city, try to figure out what food was right for him that wouldn't completely derail his nutrition goals, fail, and end up eating pizza, Chipotle, or whatever convenient thing could deliver to him. And he was like, why has no one been able to figure out a solution to figure out what food near me is right for me, period. So this is the pitch he gave me, right?
Yeah.
And I have had lots of different dietary restrictions. Like, you name it, I've got it. My sister grew up with a life-threatening peanut allergy. So we're like the allergy kids.
Love it.
Yep. And so for me, I felt that pain, but in my everyday life, not just while I'm traveling, while I'm living. And so that's the conversation that we had for 3 hours of like, this is a really big problem. Why has no one gone after it? And so this was about 1.5 years ago. So we spent the past 1.5 years digging into the food industry, transparency around food data, and trying to figure out why no one had solved this problem. Turns out it's a really hard problem to solve because on the grocery side of things, it's easy. The consumer packaged goods brands are required to provide nutrition facts panels. And over the past decade, we've had lots of those little labels starting to pop up on the front of our groceries of like, it's gluten-free, it's keto, it's paleo.
It's vegan.
So it's easy. It's publicly available. But on the restaurant side of things, the prepared food side of things, meal kits, basically everything other than consumer packaged good products, it's a black hole. You have no idea. You are at the whim of whoever is selling you the food product at the end of the day and whether they know what they're talking about or not. And so we are building a database that doesn't exist in a very opaque industry. But what we have going for us, I believe, is this massive wave of change that's being pushed by the consumer. So for the past decade, we've been pushing it in grocery products, packaged goods. We've been driving that change as a people.
Absolutely.
We feel like it's coming on the other side of the house too. And so we want to be at the forefront of that, pushing it along, building the right tools to make it possible for people to have that info.
Yeah. And honestly, what a challenge. You would think it would be fairly simple to just be like, well, what restaurants are vegan or what restaurants have gluten-free options? And it's difficult, even just as a consumer, to go to a restaurant and see, for example, my husband he's not technically allergic to cilantro, but he has that gene that many people know where it tastes like soap. My uncle has it. It's terrible. And he can't eat anything especially anything in like Mexican cuisine. And so he asks, "Is there cilantro? Is there?" And especially us living in Texas, like it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's the chicken is marinated in it. The beef is marinated in it. And he's like, one time we went somewhere recently and literally everything on the menu except for the tortilla chips and tortillas were it had cilantro in it somehow. And so that's been difficult. Second thing is we try to stay away from seed oils, palm
Mm-hmm.
oil, sunflower oil, canola oil, because it's terrible for you. It's technically rancid, it's gross. And so trying to find restaurants that use olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, or even that some people think this sounds crazy, just butter or just um tallow, like beef tallow. Like those are the healthier options, but it's so much cheaper for restaurants to get peanut oil, canola oil in bulk and fry and cook their food in it. Even if the item you're ordering is not fried, it still may be cooked in it, right? And so it's hard to ask. There's been so many times over the last probably 6 months that we'll be at a restaurant and he'll ask, "What is it cooked in?" And the waiter or waitress is like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
oil. And
Oil?
he's like, what kind? Um, it's a big issue. And I think, that like, whew, I could talk about like health and wellness and all of that forever.
All day long. And that's a problem. That is a prime one, right? What oil is it fried in? What oil is it cooked in? Our team has gone after that. And now for 400 restaurants in Dallas, we have that information. And if you go on the Bitewell app and click on the restaurant, we'll tell you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yes, it's life changing. And
Uh,
for me, with allergies, the big thing that I encounter is it fried in the same fryer as the
yes,
thing I'm allergic to? And so
right.
one time I was at a Mexican restaurant in New York and I ordered churros thinking, I'm fine. I
Sure.
have a shellfish allergy. Okay. Churros, shellfish, not the same thing.
Nope.
I think I'm totally fine. I take a bite of the churro and I start to feel that like throat closing up feeling. I'm like, oh no, something's wrong. It turns out they fry everything in the
In the
same
same.
fryer. The chips, the churros, the shrimp, it all goes in the same fryer. First of all, ew,
Gross.
gross, gross.
I don't want shrimpy churros.
Who wants shrimpy churros? But
Disgusting.
most importantly, if you're gonna give me shrimpy churros, you need to tell me.
Yeah,
I
you
need
gotta
to
say
know.
something.
You got to say something.
Oh
Um,
Lord.
so anyway, there are a million stories like this. This is the problem we're going after. It's going to take us a
Yeah.
long time to solve it,
Sure.
but we're starting. We're here,
Yeah.
starting from the ground floor and really building a new category in food commerce where we're marrying convenience, delivery, all of the things that we've all come to expect with transparency and personalization.
I guess they don't realize how much restaurants are like they're just kind of like doing their own thing, like doing whatever, and how much the consumer doesn't know, like that your food is also being fried in the same one as the shrimp or the catfish or whatever. Like that is crazy. And I don't know, like I would want to know that even if I didn't have an allergy, because like we said, that's gross. I think it's gross. Um, so okay, let's back up. This is a big feat to take on, and we know the common like assumption in the tech world is that it's going to cost a lot of money. Okay, so you guys started this and had no money. So let's talk about that. How has it been? Have you gotten funding? Has it been self-funded? What's the story?
Let's talk about it. So, Chris started with bootstrap money, his own capital, just a tiny bit. I added a little bit in. That got us somewhere. Then we raised money.
Okay,
We now are backed by 3 VCs, which is
right.
awesome. We raised our pre-seed. It closed last year. We built a product off of that. And now we're raising our seed. So we're raising our next round of funding right now. And that was probably, there are so many learning curves, right? Coming from a large public company to a startup with no people.
Did you have any knowledge of like how all of this worked? Like venture capitalist and pre-seed and seed, like,
no.
Did you know any? Yeah. Okay.
No, I have an amazing network of people and friends who are much smarter than me and know all of these things. And so I leaned on them pretty hard. I read a lot of books. I talked to a lot of people. Chris and I have a great board of advisors. We have awesome mentors, and Chris has done this before.
Okay. That's good.
And so he was able to help guide me, but no, I had no idea what I was doing. Flying by the seat of my pants. Still am. I know a little bit more now, but I would say our first go round of fundraising was hard. Harder, honestly, than I expected it to be. And the thing that wasn't, the thing that's funny now, looking back, is the past couple of years have been the biggest venture funding years ever of all time. And so when you sit down and talk to people who are in the space, they're like, you'll have no problem getting money. Getting money is super easy. There's money everywhere. And then you step into a meeting and you start talking about your business and your proposition and where you are. And it's hard. It's not as easy as people paint it out to be. And it's a slog. Yeah. And, you sit down with 20 people and, maybe 2 of them write you a check if you're lucky. And it takes a lot of grit. Yeah. And you really have to put your ego aside and just keep walking into the room and keep listening. And with every rejection, also hear the feedback and then decide, do I agree? Is this feedback valid? And how am I going to implement it? And then take that learning into the next meeting. And that's really how we grew. Yeah. So to answer your question, it's been, I know I didn't know anything, and and now I know some things, and I'm learning every day.
So, okay, let's talk like literally about the money, because I know people at home have these questions. I have these questions myself. I've never been in the startup space. So when you two put some money together, are we talking like you had $5,000 and are we talking like $50,000? He had $100,000. Like, I think some people's conceptions of startups, like, and how much money it takes. And then I want to talk about, what is the money going to do? Is it paying you guys? Is it paying for the research and the people, the developers of the app? Like, let's lay it all out there.
Yeah. So I can't disclose how much funding we've raised thus far. But I can say that we started with small amounts of money. So not 5,000, but not 100,000, like tens of thousands, and have grown from there. Does the money go to paying us? Not at this point. Almost.
Yeah, I figured.
We're almost at that point. We're getting close. But most of our funding has gone to development, research, a little bit of user acquisition, but not so much even at this point because we're still so new. Paying our team of engineers, data scientists, and dietitians and nutritionists who have really built the brain behind Bitewell. That's really what the funding has gone to thus far. And in our next stage, now that we have the app is live, it's piloting in Dallas. Dallas is our first market. Mm-hmm. It's certainly still early and clunky and all of those things, but we're getting great feedback. So now with our kind of next round of funding, the things that we'll start to look toward as we mature as a business are, okay, we need to continue growing out the team. We need to continue maturing the product. We need to actually start putting some funding behind growth now that the product is out in the world and doing well. And so we're moving out of development test insular phase into more of a consumer facing growth phase. Yeah.
That's super exciting. So in these next couple of phases, next couple of years, let's say, you're raising more money, you're getting more funding. And I think the question for some people, including myself, is if it's a tech product, right? How do you make money? Especially if the app is free, which it may not be, especially down the road. But what's the process here?
That's a great question. And one that Chris and I talk about a lot because we have both come from packaged goods where the revenue structure and the profit structure is
Pretty clear.
pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
You have a product, there's a margin on your product, that's how you make your money.
Yep.
We have lots of different possible ways to make money. And I think every tech company is different. Some tech companies focus on growth and users, some tech companies focus on subscriptions and recurring monthly revenue. Some tech companies focus on data. And so it's all very different. And it just depends. And for us, we believe that we have multiple possible revenue streams. And what's important to us as founders is to really build a business with sound fundamentals so that we, do have the opportunity to make money at some point in our existence, as opposed to there are lots of tech companies that are wildly successful and it takes them a very, very, very long time to turn a profit. That may be the case for us, but we hope it's not.
Sure. I think that's probably what makes people nervous too, to jump into something like this or be a part of a startup. So, was it difficult for you guys to find, like, to hire those nutritionists, those people, to be a part of your team? Because I wonder if people feel like, okay, this is a paying job, but it's a startup. How do I feel about that? Like,
We have been very lucky, I think, because what we're building is so new and first to market, and the pain of the problem is really felt by the dietetic community and the food science community and the nutrition community. We haven't had trouble hiring people. We have an awesome team who is very aligned with the vision. And Chris and I, as founders, are really transparent. We bring our team along the entire process. We tell them where we're at. We tell them we're at with fundraising.
I love that.
We share as much as we possibly can with them so that they can make the best, most informed decisions about their life.
Yes.
We're never going to tell, at some point when we're a much larger company, there will be much more stability, but we're very transparent with the fact that this is a startup. Anything could happen. And we believe that there's so much upside possibility and potential that it's worth the risk.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the biggest thing you hit on was they're so aligned with your vision and your team. Let's talk about that. I think it is a huge and underrated part of being an entrepreneur is making sure everything you do, whoever you're hiring, whoever you're bringing in, whatever is aligned with you, right? What were the conversations like with you and Chris as you sat down and started to look at who you were going to bring into really essentially like your baby, right? The thing that you're most passionate about. What were those conversations like?
Yeah. So Chris and I have, from conversation one, we have this inherent values alignment that I think makes us really great partners. And so it went unspoken for a long time that we were looking for people that shared our values and shared our mission, which is at the company level to make healthy eating simple and accessible for all. So everything that we do as a company, from the products that we build, the way that we market, the way that we build our data, is focused on achieving that mission. So that was first and foremost, and for a long time went unsaid, and was just kind of how we naturally looked for people and assessed people. I had the benefit of spending some time at Bridgewater where there were some really fantastic frameworks around a lot of things: project management, process management, and hiring was one of them. And the way that they think about hiring is something that I have adopted, in that there are kind of 3 tiers that you assess when you're bringing someone on board. First, you assess a values fit. So that's what we were talking about just now. Are you aligned with our values as a business and how we want to grow? That's the hardest thing, truly, and the most important thing to me to find, and where we like to spend the most time. The next bucket is abilities. So if we give you the right training, if we give you the right tools, are you able to do the work that's required? And so that takes some time to suss out, and there's a different interview process for that. And then the last thing is skills. Skills can be taught, abilities can be honed, but values generally don't change.
Yeah.
And so that's how we think about hiring.
It's just so important. I think, you've probably had experiences or seen experiences or things happen in your corporate life where someone was not aligned and it didn't work out. And hindsight's 2020. I know, for me, there have been at least one or two people that I've hired over the last 5 years that, just contractors or whatever, regardless of what it is, how big or small the role is, if they're not aligned, it's not going to be a 100% positive outcome of your time and your efforts, and then especially your money and your dollars. So what would be maybe your advice to people that are listening that maybe they're not ready to hire, maybe they are hiring down the road? What should they like? What are some red flags? What are they looking out for? Like in those interviews that, you're sitting down with someone, you're spending the majority of time talking about alignment and values. What are some like things that you can warn people about?
Oh my gosh. How much time do we have? No, I'm
Right?
kidding. So
Yeah.
I would say as it depends on the stage of your company, and it
Sure.
depends on you and your particular value set. For us, we are in pretty early stages, and so we can be very flexible about a lot of things, but what we don't have is time. We need to move
Yeah.
fast. And so we need everyone to be very much on the same page about what we're trying to build. We want lots of different types of minds in the room so that we can have the appropriate type of conflict that builds better product, right? We don't want
Yeah.
everyone to just do what we say. That's not helpful either.
No.
But we want everyone to be driving in the same direction so that we're not crashing into each other on the road as we
Mm-hmm.
speed toward getting a product to market.
Yeah.
I'm going to play out this metaphor as long as I can.
Love it.
So that's what's important to us. What has been helpful for us is before even sitting down to write a job description, before even figuring out what roles you need to hire for, sit down with your partner if you're a startup, or sit down with your executive team if you're a larger corporation, and write down your values. Get aligned on them, because usually the problem starts there, where you have two partners or you have 4 executives or you have 20 executives and not everyone in the room is aligned on values. And so everyone is interviewing the candidate a little bit differently because they are you're not all looking for the same thing. So make sure you're looking for the same thing. Is probably my biggest advice, because values are different for every business. And so it's hard for me to say, a red flag is this, because what's a red flag for me might not be a red flag for you, depending on your business and what you need. But just write it down and then test for it in the interview process in a very deliberate way.
So let's say they're interviewing someone. I'm trying to get to like something spicy and juicy. And we don't have to call anybody out, but because I think people, because I've experienced this, people can pretend that they're on board to get their foot in. Have you seen that? Or maybe in other areas, maybe not even just in this startup.
Not as much here, because I think you can call them the fakers, right, are scared off by the amount of work that it's going to take us, honestly, to build. And so they're like, see ya. But in other roles, sure, someone really wants the job. And so they're trying to align themselves to the job, as opposed to walking in with an open heart and saying, okay, are we a fit for each other? So how do you suss that out? I think be somewhat relentless in your questioning. So if you're not sure, just keep talking, keep asking questions. At some point, as you're digging into someone's experience and background and learning about how they think, it will become apparent.
Yeah.
Instead of asking questions about what someone did, ask questions that help you understand how they think and how they
How?
process. How?
Yeah.
How is really the question to ask, and that will
Or
get you,
why?
or why. How or why. Just skip what. It's not useful.
Or just
Um,
they may just say what they think you want to hear.
yeah. But how, why, how, why? Keep asking those things and you'll get to it.
That's
It'll
good.
become apparent.
So last question before we kind of wrap up. Lots of things are so exciting and so fun, and we have those moments of like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm in this business, in this industry. That's why I do the work that I do, dozens of hours every single week. But there's so many things that are just completely like unsexy, not aesthetic, not the it girl that we see on TikTok, whatever. What is that for you? Or did you have any conceptions before going into starting, like being in a startup, that you were like, oh, this is going to be like fantastic. I'm going to travel. I'm like, did you have any of that?
Yeah, I think I did. It was very quickly eradicated. Um, it's
Shattered.
shattered. Ego, gone. I have no ego anymore.
No, just very
Whatever I
humbled.
had has disappeared. Um, I would say, yeah, of course. I mean, I think you hear these stories of what seem like overnight successes of companies that launch and take off and they have
Blew
hockey
up.
stick growth and they blew up. And I was having a conversation a week ago, I think, with another founder, and she said something to me that really stuck. And she was like, when you see those hockey stick charts, you know what I'm talking about, where the growth is rapid and accelerated.
Yep.
No one tells you that that flat line before you get to the acceleration can last years. It's not months, it's not weeks, it's years. And so really buckling in for a long time of slogging, of doing every job. Of there's not as much packing boxes in this role because it's
Yeah.
tech, but
Yeah.
of being up at 2, 3, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, working with developers in other countries and like having the same bug pop up over and over and over and over again and trying to figure out how to debug it, of, being customer service and also doing, magazine interviews. You're doing
Yeah.
everything all in the same day.
Yeah.
Um, and so some things are glamorous, but 99% of it at this point isn't. And if I can get to the point where 5% of it is glamorous and 95% of it isn't, I will be a very happy lady.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, it makes me think of, we've heard plenty of business gurus talk about this, but like enjoying the journey, and like that is what should be glamorized, if anything, is like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I love about um TikTok right now. I don't know if you are into TikTok, but
Of course.
of course, okay, thank God. Um, it's like we see it's not like Instagram. It's not like any other platform. And so people are literally this morning I was thinking about filming a video outside of my house in the street for some reason. I don't know, don't ask. But and then I was like, I wonder, I should just do a home tour of like, welcome to my very average home in the middle of Texas. Like, this is a very average home. I'm going to give you a tour of my tiny 3-bedroom home, and I hope you enjoy it. Like, because I think that's very like relatable. I think now more than ever, we're seeing the behind the scenes lives and everyday stuff from, people to, corporate queens, if you will, or entrepreneurs or whatever. And it's more, you're like, oh, that's what my kitchen really looks like too. Or like, that's what, like, I have, you know, stuff in my passenger seat of the car, like that's, normal. And I think that's what also we can adapt to entrepreneurism, is it is not always sexy and fun and whatever. I think, you know, like you were saying, it's 1 to 5%, I took a
Maybe.
maybe, you know, um, I took a trip to New York last summer, in a retreat with other entrepreneurs that I was in a mastermind with. And it really was like, it was the sexiest I've ever felt as an entrepreneur. I was like, we're at this fancy spa hotel. We're going to dinner. We're outside. Here's the river, blah, blah, blah. But it was like 3 days, and then I'm back in Texas in my home office.
You're back at it.
Yeah, back at it, it's kind of like going on vacation and then coming back to real life. So, but I think enjoying the journey is really important.
Yeah. And if
Yes.
you believe in what you're building, then
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
No,
what you're doing, um, because what you're building is what's important.
absolutely. Well, it has been so fun to talk to you, Sam. Tell us how everyone can check out Bitewell, what's going on, and then what can people be looking for if they're not in Dallas?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're in Dallas, we are currently piloting the Bitewell app. It is live on the App Store and Google Play. Check it out, download it, give us some feedback. We want to hear. You can place all your food orders there and see awesome transparency info. You can also follow us at Bitewell Co on Instagram. You can follow me at Samantha Citro Alexander if you want to see my very non-glamorous life.
Yeah.
And if you're not in Dallas, we will be coming to you soon. So stay
Yes.
tuned. You can sign up for updates on bitewell.com.
So exciting. Well, I'm gonna show my husband this app. He's gonna be so excited, and hopefully we can use it soon. But it was great to have you, and thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.